Hello and welcome. It's another beautiful episode of Report Desk Africa on News Central Television. And of course, it's always a pleasure to have you join us if you are an existing subscriber. And of course, if you're a new subscriber, I use the word subscriber because you might just be tuning in. And I want you to always watch the show. If you're just joining us, it's Report Desk Africa, and we bring you the latest and most trendy stories and news stories across the continent. I am Nii Omoni, and I'm not doing this alone.
Of course, he's not. I am Blessings Masugu. Welcome to Report Desk Africa, the program where we share with you the top headline stories across the African continent with the reports that we've packaged for you. Now, on this show, we tend to look at the present happenings compared to past events and, of course, future expectations. And we hope, as always, that this is an enlightening episode for you today. So once again, thank you for joining us. Now, before we go further, we did tell you last week about some events that we're expecting to unfold, and we'll be taking a quick look at the forecast that we told you about. Now, we mentioned that Zimbabwe's plans to ban foreign recruitment of health personnel is in place. And we also mentioned about the update on Nigeria taking the same step sometime very soon.
And we also told you that the Guinean Navy seized more than 1.5 tons of cocaine from a ship flying the Sierra Leonean flag. And finally, we gave an update on the recurring drought killing livestock in southern Ethiopia.
Well, that being said, today we'll be looking at two major issues that have become a cause for concern is in the African continent, especially in Nigeria. Now, the first topic that we'll be talking about, is the topic that cuts across the entire African continent, which is African brain drain. And then we move to West Africa, particularly Nigeria, as we discuss the whistleblowing policy in the country, as government officials have been summoned over alleged 2.4 billion oil theft. Well, anyways, you don't want to miss this episode of Report Desk Africa, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome. If you're just joining us, we're happy to have you. This is Report Desk Africa. We told you earlier, our stories today are centered around Nigeria and, of course, Africa. And health practitioners in Nigeria seeking to relocate to the United Kingdom may have to seek alternative options, as active recruitment by health and social care employers have now been put on hold. Shocker. The announcement was contained in the revised Code of Practice for the international recruitment of health and social care personnel in England. This follows a report by the World Health Organization that some countries are facing most pressing health workforce challenges related to universal health coverage. Now, you would recall that last week, Zimbabwe also put in plans to ban foreign recruitment of health personnel. And today, we will be focusing on the African brain drain, its causes, costs, and consequences. But before we do that, let's take a look at this report by News Central's Adeshewa Udushoga.
There are about 11,000 Nigerian-trained doctors working in the United Kingdom, with more still willing to leave. Nigeria has been faced with a worrying brain drain in recent times, with many medical practitioners leaving the country for greener pastures. After India and Pakistan, Nigeria has the third highest number of foreign doctors working in the UK. The United Kingdom has now placed Nigeria on the red list of countries that should not be actively targeted for recruitment by its health and social care employers.
Yeah, that news really didn't come as a shock. I don't think it came as a shock to a lot of healthcare practitioners in Nigeria, because we've always been saying that there is shortage of healthcare workers, clinicians in Nigeria healthcare sector. The country is in a terrible state. The investment in the healthcare sector is abysmal. It's tragic, right? So you don't expect doctors to thrive in this kind of condition.
Similarly, lawmakers in Nigeria also proposed a bill seeking to curtail the mass exodus of medical practitioners, where qualified doctors would only be granted full licenses after they had worked for a minimum of 5 years in the country.
Anybody who wants to leave before 5 years he should refund the government of Nigeria the money that was used in training him.
Very depressing, right? It's very annoying that policymakers, instead of looking for ways to improve the healthcare sector, for example, increase the annual budget of health. There are other ways you can tackle this problem. Why are these people leaving, first of all? Why do they intend to leave? They don't feel safe. They don't feel well compensated. Sort that out. Fix that.
In a related development, the Vice President of Zimbabwe has also announced that the country intends to introduce a law that will make it illegal for other nations to recruit its health workers.
Good remuneration, you will see these workers not going out. Unfortunately, this is not the case in Zimbabwe. We cannot rely on putting laws to say we would not allow you to go out because you are destroying the system. No.
Although the United Kingdom has stated that the policy does not prevent individual health and social care personnel resident in countries on the list from making a direct application, but in-house policies in countries like Nigeria and Zimbabwe may make the relocation process even more difficult for intending medical personnel. Adeshewa Odushoga reporting for News Central.
Well, there you have it, the report about brain drain packaged by our correspondent Adeshewa Odushoga. Now, in case you didn't know, brain drain is basically, the movement of skilled personnel from their own countries of origin to another more developed countries for greener pastures. And now we've seen that the federal government is putting plans in place to, implement a 5-year policy where doctors majorly, especially because we have that issue mostly in Nigeria with medical doctors. So they're saying that no doctor is allowed to leave the country within 5 years of work. And, it's been a debate since the policy came to play. And, we're still trying to see whether or not it will be implemented successfully. But once again, a big thank you to Adeshewa for doing justice to that report. Now, joining us to further discuss this, we have Science and Health Editor, The Guardian newspaper, Nigeria, Chukwuma Mwanya. Thank you so much, Chukwuma, for joining us. Chukwuma, can you hear me? Chukwuma, are you there? All right, while we wait for Chukwuma to joining on the conversation, Nii, there is a school of thought that says, usually I like to see the argument about an issue. I don't just like to see from one perspective. So I read about this and I saw that some people would say that what Nigerians and the Nigerian government will call brain drain should be seen as brain gain, because basically you're going to another country for real. But then if you look at it from a vantage point, stop doing your face like that.
No.
I
wanted to laugh. I get what you're trying to say.
Really, people would say that from a vantage point, right? At the end of the day, that a single person can come back to better the country, and even in the interim, make provision for his or her family. So people should see it as brain gain and not brain drain.
Or brain migration, or brain resettlement.
Before you give your own idea, I think we have Chukwuma with us. So Chukwuma, can you hear me? Chukwuma, please confirm that you can hear us. Okay, so Nii, while we wait for Chukwuma, you can go ahead.
Okay, so let's get this straight. It's not just the medical field, okay? Okay, for example, the medical field, we have the doctors, we have the nurses, we have the physiologists, we have the lab technician, and not just for the medical field. Even tech guys are moving out, and you can't blame them. Okay, so according to the statistics I have here, about 10 years ago, a junior staff medical doctor was earning about $1,000. As it now is less than $400. A lot has changed. A lot has changed since the fact that health sector has not been given the right priority. The health sector has not been given a lot of, and you can tell. WHO recommends that patients to doctor ratio should be 1 to 600, but in Nigeria we have 1 to 5,000. And I think that explains the fact that when you get to an hospital and you want to see the doctor, not to even talk of the public hospitals, you have to wait for hours, about 6 to 5 hours before you can even get to see the doctor. It's not the first time it's happening. It's been happening for years. And now it's just the time they're now making effort to do something about it. And see, this is a global issue now because the COVID-19 really affected everybody.
Right.
the UK, Europe, everybody, and not just Africa. And everyone is just looking for succor. People want someone, a skilled person that can actually take care of their sick one, take care of the needy. And that's where the opportunity lies. I get it. I'm just more concerned of, which I'm hoping Chukuma still joins us and speaks about, is the fact that the intervention of the government now, is it too late or just the wrongest time or not the right step?
You know, well, honestly, while we wait for Chukuma, I would say that I don't see this as an intervention. I think that they're just trying to do damage control or to prevent more damage. Because if we're talking about intervention, then we're talking about the government making better standard of living for these doctors or this, tech people. Okay. But we didn't hear of that for the longest time, right? Now it seems as if there's a mass exodus to other countries and then they're scared and they're trying to put, laws in place. Okay, you can't leave in 5 years. And then we heard them saying things like, if you want to leave, you have to refund the money. I mean, these people paid for their school fees. In case you forgot, know. So they paid for school fees and then a lot of things. And not to talk about how cumbersome the process even is, right?
The first question I want to ask is, these politicians themselves and these elite, do they use hospitals in Nigeria? Most of them do not. They do not use the hospitals in Nigeria. And just to explain this better to our audience, now what they are proposing, naturally, the process should be when you finish your academics, when you graduate as a medical student, you get your provisional license, then you do an internship, which will be supervised by any a better person on the field, of course, for a period of time. Then you get your full license, then you go to serve at the National Youth Service School. But right now, what they're saying is, once you graduate, before you get your provisional license, you need to do internship for 5 years. Come on. For 5 years. Doing what? So it means you can be stuck at a particular hospital. You can be stuck under a particular person. You can be stuck at a particular place where you can't move forward or do anything. Because it's almost like you want to seek for a job opportunity, but you don't have the NYC certificate. There's no way they are going to hire you. Yeah. So it's really a big issue. I get the fact that they are trying to keep the best hands here, because the truth is, if you check most of these countries outside Nigeria, you will see Nigerian people there in different industries, topping the charts and making waves. It's obvious, we get it. But is this the best way to go around it? And just as you said, this is not even damage control. This is damage expansion. Sincerely.
I want to compare this to, the just concluded elections, where one of the politicians, one of the presidential candidates was saying something like, you're trying to mitigate or reduce the number of people that are traveling out, the Japa syndrome. And then you feel like that is the right way. The best thing to do is improve your own system. Exactly. I know, seeing how this is a developing country, it might not be 100% instant. But then again, there are steps that you take. In fact, there are things you will do that people will know that, okay, this country is going right,
they are doing something about it.
So you are now trying to make it seem as though you're forcing people to stay in a bad condition. Nobody wants to do that. And the fear of so many people now is they're just opening more doors for illegal means. Because the truth is, in this world, nothing is impossible, right? So you're saying you won't give.
If you have the money, trust me.
Do you understand? Now you're saying that you won't give, because the truth is, most of the people, let's say 70-80% of the people who migrate are people who can afford to. Yeah. So if they can afford to migrate, and then you're saying that you won't give them their license until after 5 years, what else do you think there is to do? I mean, someone will just come from somewhere. Don't worry, just pay me.
We'll sort it out.
We will sort it, and then you will see a lot of people going out illegally, because there's no option. They have to.
They have to. And just to clear this, sorry to butt in, just to clear this. The only thing that was stopped, because the UK placed Nigeria and 54 other countries on the red list, the only thing that was stopped is active recruitment. So they can't come to Nigeria to set up an agency and say, okay, you know what, we're hiring health workers. But recruitment can still be done. It doesn't mean as an health worker, I still can approach these people and say, you know what, I'm skilled, just pick me up, let's do something about it. So it has still not curbed the whole issue of the mass exodus, because people still want to leave.
And then, talking about, there's when issues like this arise, right? That's when you start hearing things like bilateral agreements and things like that. The truth is, these countries, need these African hands because they've seen how talented they are. And that's no joke, right? An average African man, for some reason, maybe genetically or because, we've been spanked so long that you have to read your book.
Right. We're so
exactly,
rigid.
So wherever an African is, by default, you see the person standing out. The first 20, first 10, first 5, you see an African, you see a Nigerian, especially in the medical field. So these countries actually need them. So like you said, the fact that the active hiring is no longer enough doesn't mean they will not passively hire.
It doesn't mean it's not happening.
They obviously need it. So I don't know about having cooperation with other countries to stop people from coming when some countries actually need those helping hands, and it's obvious that your own country is not willing to help you,
and it's not even managing the talent well.
So not even trying to make effort. So there will have to be a way.
I was listening to a conversation recently, and the man mentioned the fact that one of the things this particular bill they're proposing is not covering is the fact that not everybody who went to study medicine is actually practicing.
Yeah.
So their name is on the register that these are the list of medical doctors, but they are not practicing. Yeah. We have some people right now that they are photographers.
Exactly.
We have some people right now. For Christ's sakes, if you check the degree of so many people working in different industries right now, that's not even what they study.
Exactly.
The word is Nigeria happened. And Nigeria is still happening to so many other people. So if I'm just, what I would want us to really talk about is what would be the best way to ensure, we know it's a long shot, to try to start putting in some things right now and saying, because this year alone, the budget for this year, health actually got an improvement, about 5.4% of the total budget, as against what it was in 2015, which is a very good one. About 2015 was 278.31 billion, but this year it's 1.17 trillion.
But then again, whether or not there was an increase in the budget, was there an increase in the standard of living for these doctors? Was there an increase in the pay for these doctors? Right? Or was there, better training, better trainings made available for these doctors? So the fact that the budget is increased, it's not even on. It's not.
But just to play the devil's advocate, it's been a while. I've seen the NMA, Nigeria Medical Association, actually go on strike.
Well, there's that. How about it's because they are making under G, like Nigerians would call it, under G plans to just vanish.
So what do they start? What do they stand to gain?
If they go?
No, what do they stand to gain if they are not opposing the government and they are what way would we be saying they are making money right now? Because the truth is there's no way they are making money, except maybe the normal misappropriation of funds that happens in most African countries is happening, that the leaders or the people who are the helm of affairs at most of these places are sitting on what's supposed to trickle down. Now, Lagos might be different because Lagos is, we understand that the wife of the governor is even a medical person. She's in the field. So maybe they might be enjoying from that benefit. But what about other states?
That's not an excuse.
36 states. So the question is there an envelope? Is there a blanket option that can actually work? I understand that we need to, the government needs to put in, build hospitals, make sure that there's good standard of living. But it's not just about the doctors now. Good standard of living for individuals, because I might not be a doctor.
Yeah.
But I need good standard. If I'm healthy, why should I even visit the hospital in the first place?
Yeah. So let me just quickly say this, right? I think that the Nigerian government is getting this wrong, right? The Nigerian government is behaving like every typical parent. You know that you made a mistake. You are sorry, but you're not saying it. So you're threatening your children to, trying to manipulate them. Now, I'm not saying that there should be incentives. You've seen that these people want to go out for better living conditions. What can you do to make it better? Now, there are certain incentives you can just add a little to their salaries, make better
something.
Working conditions. Try and make even the schooling system better, because so many people want to study medicine, but when they see how cumbersome the process is, how tedious it is, they just drop. So make these incentives available. And I'm not saying gaslight them into believing that the system is better, but actually make the system better instead of threatening them. And
where you know there's an issue is the fact that the Jackpot syndrome has been, for our viewers, by the way, Jackpot means people trying to escape, is a Nigerian word for people who are trying to escape
the country. Nee, before you go ahead, I think we just got word that our guest is here.
Oh,
so,
great.
Mr. Chukwuma, in case you can hear us, Mr. Chukwuma, can you confirm, please?
I I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We almost got carried away with this conversation, but we need you to help us put some things into perspective. So once again, thank you for joining us. To our viewers watching, in case you're just joining, Mr. Chukwuma is a science and health editor of the Guardian newspaper. So once again, Mr. Chukwuma, thanks for joining us. We're talking about the concept of brain drain and, you know, the new policy that is being put in place by the government. That's the 5-year. You have to work for 5 years before you're allowed to leave or even given your certificate or whatever it may be. What is your take on that?
Okay, basically, let me put the thing straight. It's not necessarily the Nigerian government. You know, it's like a motion, a bill, you know, presented by a member of the House of Representatives, Daniel Johnson. And basically, it's by the House of Reps, which is an arm of the government, all the same. So that the bill has the intention, you know, to reverse brain drain. But, you know, it's controversial in the sense that even the doctors, you know, they rejected it. So that's the situation for now.
Mr. Chukwuma, can you help us understand this? Because standard of living cuts across board. It's not just for the doctors, it's also for every other person that is a Nigerian. And we understand that the rep represents different angles or different people across the country, and they are the mouthpiece of the people, and what they propose, of course, should be a reflection of what the people want or what the people are hoping to get in terms of changes. And for the rep to propose this, I think it's in the first reading, if I'm correct, and does not pass the second reading. If this eventually is what is approved by the House of Rep, what are we looking at here? What could be the impact of this bill?
What is certain is that the bill cannot fly. But just like you said, eventually, assuming it gets passed, but I don't think so. Because when we talk about brain drain, it's not just about the doctors or the nurses or the pharmacists. It's something that cuts across all the professions, you know, in Nigeria. And this particular issue now is very sensitive because the doctors and the medical professionals are so important to the society because health is wealth. So as you must have noticed, there's a lot of reaction to this. Even the Nigerian doctors in diaspora, they rejected it. But just like you said, assuming it gets passed, the consequences is going to be far-reaching. And certainly, I'm sure the doctors are going to go on strike. The ones on ground, they are going to reject it. And, you know, so I don't think it will be passed. But the implication of what, you know, what is being recommended or proposed by the bill is not workable. Or how do I mean? You say that after graduation, the doctors will now have to work for 5 years without licensing. So how can a doctor who is not licensed work? You know, this is another argument to it. Then also you are saying that doctors should not go anywhere till after 5 years. Okay, does it mean that for, you know, the politicians also, they have to start traveling abroad for medical treatment? So it's a big issue, and the controversy is growing by the day.
Yeah. That's actually true. I mean, that reminds me of a time when, you know, there was this buzz about quack doctors, and people were asking, why would you allow someone operate as a doctor or practice medicine without a license? And now we're coming, fast forward to today, they're saying that you have to practice for 5 years without a license. But anyways, away from that controversy, another issue, I mean, yet another controversy is the fact that some people say that instead of seeing this as brain drain, and I mentioned it earlier, that it's best for the government to see it as brain gain because of the you know, future benefits, so to say, that these people who migrate will eventually have on both the government of the country and their families. What do you think about that?
Okay. What I think about that is that the argument does not really. I'm not in support of that. The Minister of Labour, Dr. Christine Gige, has also said something like that. The current Minister of Health, Dr. Stan Gige, has also said that will stand to benefit from the foreign exchange, that when they're in diaspora, they will be sending and stuff like that. They can also get exposure and things like that. But you ask yourself, how many doctors do we have in Nigeria? Presently, according to NMA and so on, we have about 25,000 doctors who are practicing. And just like I heard you guys say, which is true, there are so many doctors that are even in politics. in short, most of some of our governors and some of our senators are medical doctors. Then if you go to the Federal Ministry of Health, maybe, I'm not sure, up to 5% of the senior guys there, they are medical doctors. They are just doing office work, paperwork. They are not practicing medicine. So we have serious acute shortage. And let me put it in perspective. The WHO recommends that there should be one doctor for not more than 600 patients. But in Nigeria, the figure is like one doctor to about 6,000 patients. So we have acute shortage. So recommending that, reverse brain drain for Nigeria is suicidal. It's not ideal at all. That's my take on it.
Just before I let you go, Mr. Chukuma.
Yeah.
Just as you mentioned, 25,000 practicing doctors in the whole of Nigeria, a population of about 200 million people. And if we go by the data and the recommendation of the WHO, which is 1 to 600, as I said earlier, we have 1 to 5,000 now. One of the challenges I have is the fact that you see a lot of people conferred with the name or the post of doctor. You hear Dr. Sage, Dr. this, and a lot of doctor, but doctor of what is what the problem is. It's just name, but not practicing. In your own view, as someone who has been covered the health sector and seen far and wide across Nigeria and what its roots, deep challenges are, what would you propose will be the solution of how to actually keep our doctors in here? And if they can't keep the doctors in Nigeria, how can they also manage them? Even if they go there, how can Nigeria also benefit from the doctors, Nigerian doctors in diaspora?
Okay, let's tell ourselves the truth. Basically, what has happened is that when I heard that news around, I think it was on Thursday last week, I spoke with the president of what would they call here, National Association of Resident Doctors. They are like the militant arm of the parent body, the Nigerian Medical Association. He told me that there are a lot of medical doctors roaming the street. In Nigeria, for you to specialize, you have to be a resident in like a tertiary hospital, a specialist hospital, most of them federal government owned. You have to, go through that, what they call residence, before you become a specialist, a consultant. So most of these doctors, like, if you don't go through that, you just a general practitioner, you are like, forgive me to say, next to nothing. You've got nothing. So you have to be a consultant, a specialist, before you be like, that kind of doctor, people are looking at. So in Nigeria now, there are a lot of doctors roaming the streets because they don't have space to do residency. So in the line, most of these doctors now, if they have the chance, they are the ones that easily move out. But most of them want to get that specialization before they even go, because that would make them to be paid better. So the conditions here are terrible. But what the president also told me is this, that if they can get things like, simple things like even car loan, mortgage, that will keep them, that will tie them down. You see, for instance now, if someone gets a mortgage, given a house, and is supposed to pay like an installment like for 15 years, 10 years, that means that specialist is already tied down. If he already gets the car loan that is for 5 years to be paid, it's already tied down. If they get the basic things that they may not have reasons to travel. So this is the situation now. Then the other way around, let's look at it, even the budgeting for health. In Nigeria now, for the past 10 years, the maximum we've had for budget for health is around 6% of the national budget for health. The last one, this proposed one is around even 4.7% or so. So despite the amount, because inflation has taken, it doesn't really amount to, it amounts to nothing. So issue the budgeting for health, the money set up for health in Nigeria is so low that it cannot even do the basic thing. So most times now you see them paying more just to pay salary. The salaries are, and doctors also complain about the issue of taxation and deductions for their salary. Imagine the doctor that spent 7 years in the university, comes out, I think they are paid between 150,000 and 250,000. That's the fresh doctors.
Right.
To work on that do for them. So it's so poor.
True.
All right.
It's a big situation.
Okay, that being said, thank you so much, Mr. Chukwuma Wanya, Science and Health Editor of The Guardian newspaper. Really appreciate your time with us and for helping us put some things in perspective. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
We're still watching Report Desk Africa, and we have just talked about, the brain drain policy in Nigeria. And this is just the first half of the show. So if you don't want to miss the second, then you want to wait around to see what we have to talk about. So just stay with us on Report Desk Africa. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Report Desk Africa, the show that gives you in-depth understanding of each headline stories you see across the African continent. And today we have talked about, the first issue we talked about on the first segment of the show, where we said some things about brain drain and all of that. So if you're just joining, then you've missed the first half. But then, lucky you still have the second half to be with us. And now we are spotlighting the whistleblower policy in Nigeria with regards to some recent developments that have happened in the country. Now, Nigeria's House of Representatives Committee has summoned Abubakar Malami, the Attorney General of the Federation, Boss Mustapha, who is the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and of course Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, over the implementation of the whistleblower policy of the federal government. Now, the whistleblower policy is a policy that was enacted on the 21st of December 2016, to enable individuals blow the whistle, basically just, tell on anyone who is misappropriating funds or, there's a foul play in finances in the country and all of that and everything in between. Now, this follows the outcome of an investigation involving the alleged loss, wait for it, of $2.4 billion in revenue from the illegal from the illegal sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil in 2015. Now, in this report, News Central's Adeshewa Udushoga, who, by the way, did justice to, the first half of the show, giving us a report about the brain drain, is also helping us to understand the whistleblower policy and the situation of things as it has unfolded. So do take a look. We'll be right back to talk about it on the back end.
In 2016, the Nigerian government introduced a whistleblowing policy, an anti-corruption program that allows Nigerians to report cases of corruption and financial theft to Nigeria's Federal Ministry of Finance.
It encourages anyone with information about a violation of government's financial regulations, mismanagement of public funds, to report it.
However, in July 2020, a whistleblower raised an alarm over 48 million barrels of Bonny Light crude that was illegally sold in China in 2015 under the authorization of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, a claim that was investigated by an ad hoc committee set up by the lawmakers in the lower chambers in 2022. The committee has now summoned the Attorney General of the Federation, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, and the Minister of Finance over the implementation of the recovered funds.
The committee, after its investigation, will no doubt guide the House in making an informed decision in considering the whistleblowers bill currently before the National Assembly.
Heads should roll, on the basis of this. People should be asked not just to resign. People should be taken to court, right? People should serve sentences. I think it's a sorry state, especially because, again, you have the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice actually involved in this. And I hope that, the House of Reps, leadership looking into this is, pretty unbiased. They can, they can afford to throw stones, right? Because they also don't have, skeletons in their own cupboards, right? They can afford to actually do the right thing.
In June 2022, President Muhammadu Buhari said around $386 million was recovered in 2021 through the whistleblowing policy. But 7 years down the line, the policy seems to be losing its relevance, with reports of death threats and job loss for whistleblowers in the past.
What is being requested from the whistleblower is not just to provide actionable information any longer, but to go all the way and help the government do its job by recovering the fund, even though, they do not have the wherewithal, the resources to actually do that. And it's a dangerous preoccupation. The fact that if I whistleblow today, it might actually get, off the hands of people I think can be trusted, government agencies that I think can be trusted, and then someone begins to even, threaten me. It's something that should have been probed properly
As a follow-up on the investigation of the oil theft controversy, lawmakers in the committee will travel to countries where the whistleblowers reside while protecting the identities of those who will provide the committee with information, document, and fact. Adisha Waldushoga, reporting for News Central.
Wow. Money borrowed, getting missing. Revenues kept, flying away. Money that is supposed to be used for something being eaten up by a variety of animals. And now, well, I don't even know what to say right now, but let me just introduce Shewa, who I hope is with our whistle right now. Shewa, Adisha Waldushoga, one of our correspondents who put together that beautiful report. Shewa, glad to have you join us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Shewa.
Thank you, blessings.
So a lot of us are actually used to this whistleblowing thing, although maybe not on a larger scale. And I was speaking, I'm going to cast Blessings here because she said she was good at whistleblowing. So whistleblowing, as she has said, maybe on a large scale, she has explained, is an act of letting out information about a particular incident or a particular scenario that you feel action should be taken upon. And it goes even as little as casting or slying. I won't use the word sly, as telling on someone for a particular action the person has done. Shewa, when they mentioned the money of that oil delta, I was literally feeling hit inside my suit right. But prior to this, we have recorded a number of whistleblowers in Nigeria. But we've also continued to see government officials steal money, vacate money, vanish money. I wouldn't use the word rent animals to eat up money. Do you think whistleblowing is an effective tool as a corporate governance tool?
Well, I would say immediately yes, because when this policy was initially introduced in December 2016, Nigerian government was able to, record a large number of money that were returned into the federal account as a result of this policy. As a matter of fact, as of 2021, President Muhammadu Buhari said that about $386 million was actually returned into the federal government account from whistleblowers who blew up, who spilled the beans about cases of corruption, financial theft, and the likes. So yes, the Nigerian government have been able to benefit from this policy to a very large extent. We've also seen positive reports from the EFCC, that's the Economic Financial Crimes Commission, as a result of this whistleblowing policy, of course. So yes, to a large extent, from the initial perspective, when this policy was first, introduced, it actually served its purpose, and then the Nigerian government was able to curtail or reduce corruption and financial thefts in the Buhari administration to a very, very large extent. But however, it became a challenge when that they said that when corruption gets to when it gets too big, it begins to fight back. And then this happened in the case of Nigeria, where some whistleblowers are beginning to regret their actions. That why am I doing this, even for the fact that's for the public interest. But there was a particular case that was investigated by an online newspaper in Nigeria, and then it said that there was a particular man who used to work for one of the colleges of education or polytechnics in Nigeria, and then he raised an alarm over a particular fraud that was ongoing in the institution. And guess what? He lost his job. And apart from that, after losing his job, the ICPC, who should have, been saddled the responsibility of protecting this particular whistleblower, because, he has helped the government to identify a particular fraud or theft that was ongoing in the government system. And then instead of, protecting this particular whistleblower, it was left to deal with his own challenges. He did not only lose his job, it was out of job for about 7 years before it was reinstated back into the government's institution after 7 years, after which his family must have even suffered for this 7 years of him becoming jobless. He was also receiving death threats. So what do you do, or what does this say to other people who are aspiring whistleblowers? It goes to show that, you better be careful, because you don't know who you are reporting to, even in this case. Because even this particular whistleblowing case that is ongoing, there were reports that even the Ministry of Finance that you are paying, that is supposed to, pay the whistleblowers, were either not paying some of the whistleblowers, were underpaying some, or were even overpaying some. As a matter of fact, some whistleblowers are paid without records of them to have even done the job in the first place.
Right.
And then this is part of the issues where the reps have summoned the Minister of Finance for Zainab Ahmed. So a lot of things are ongoing, and I believe any whistleblower in Nigeria at the moment should be discouraged to even try to attempt spilling the beans.
You know, I would just like to remind us of the fact that this is Africa, right? This is the continent where the policymakers are the lawbreakers. This is the continent where your freedom of speech is guaranteed, but your freedom after the speech is not guaranteed. So I would like for us to look at this from two angles. Now we're talking about, you know, encouraging whistleblowers and all of that. And Shewa, just like you said, what is the guarantee that the whistleblowers will remain free after they blow the whistle? Fine, the money is returned, you find out who was the culprit and all of that, but what is the guarantee that the life of that person is spared? This is the same continent where we're still battling the freedom of speech, even for journalists who should be the freest to speak, right? Yes. You see a journalist say something about the government or the administration and goes missing, right? So what is the guarantee that a person who blows the whistle? And then that brings me to my second point, where the lawmakers are the lawbreakers. If the people in power are the ones breaking the law, who is blowing the whistle on them? And even if someone finds that, you know, someone in power is doing something that they should not do, and then they blow the whistle, what is the guarantee that the person will be safe? So it boils back down to what Shewa said. Their freedom is not guaranteed. And I assure you that 90% of the people who should be blowing whistles will not want to do that because they're scared for their lives. And then the remaining 10% would only want to do that because the government somehow, I'm not saying the government will bribe people, but we've seen these cases, we've seen these things where they are paying you as a whistleblower to cover up the things that the whistle you want to blow. Job. So, you know, I mean, you mentioned that some people have been called for probing because they are underpaying some, they are not paying some, and they're overpaying some. It will, you know, surprise you to know that the reason they are overpaying is because there's something the person knows that shouldn't be known and shouldn't be said. So this is Africa, right? This is the continent where you have to be careful what you say, because no matter the protection they promise you, you might eventually go down for it.
So Blessings, this case is actually very, I don't know, I won't take it a bit personal, very unbelievable and annoying, because you know that this is a matter that has to do with an oil theft that is, you know, amounting to about $2.4 billion. And then the sitting president is the current minister
of petroleum.
Yeah. And then under his nose, this is happening. And then somebody goes out of its way, when I was doing my research on this report, the whistleblower actually knew about this case as far back as 2015. But this policy was not introduced until 2016. So when the policy was introduced, it saw it as an opportunity to, you know, okay, this is the opportunity, the time to, you know, to speak out about the ongoing fraud that is happening here. Imagine a particular oil cargo that has been illegally sold out as far away as China, and then it saw the opportunity to speak out, and then it was not investigated until 2022. For somebody that spoke out in 2015, it was introduced to the lawmakers in 2020, and then it was investigated in 2022. And then now you'd see that as of yesterday, some independent organizations, that's the whistleblowers organizations, are now even protesting against the lawmakers, that's the House of Reps, saying that they were the ones that informed you about this problem. It is good that you were investigating it, but the investigation process was not even made public. Everything was done on the ground, and then we don't know anything about it. So it looks as though there's something that they are not telling the public. There's something that they are covering from the public. And then why is the Ministry of Finance, that is supposed to be the one we will report this case to, also being summoned for investigation? So who do we trust? You are overpaying some people, you are underpaying some people.
Sadly, the first sad news for me about this is happening when I was about to just go and get my own whistle. But let's leave that on a light note. Now, what I'm more concerned about is the fact that 70% of the lawmakers in this 9th Assembly are not re-elected for the 10th Assembly. I won't be re-elected for the 10th Assembly. And so who are we? Who exactly will be charged or prosecuted here? And let me also remind you, not in the case of corruption, though, during the case of the cash scarcity, when there was a summon for the CBN governor, you saw how long it took for him to actually listen or come for that summon. And now they're summoning the biggest guns In Nigeria, the SSG, the Minister of Finance, and it's so. This is no headway for me personally. This is no headway. But let's move on and see what the solution would be. Buhari's government is running out. In fact, it's out already. Is there any hope for this whistleblower policy to actually yield any result moving forward? Let me just get your thoughts in 30 seconds.
All right, so for me, I do not think that this particular investigation was actually see. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to see the end of it, because the lawmakers, it took you how many years for you to start to investigate this matter, like I said, and then you are already on your way out. A lot of them who are actually part of this ad hoc committee are not being re-elected into the same seat. So we are going to have fresh lawmakers coming into the 10th assembly, like you mentioned. So the question is, who carries on the responsibility? And are they going to really solve this case as it is now before you eventually leave? We have less than a month before many of them would be taken out of the seats. So who is going to continue this case? As a matter of fact, I think our boss Mustafa had said that they had not received any letter from the lawmakers, which means that, you know, granting, even appearing before the reps is likely impossible.
Right. The usual. I mean, this is a conversation that will go as long as we can take it if we had time. But because of our time, we'll have to stop here. And hopefully we can see, we'll see how it unfolds, so we can have the opportunity to have the conversation again. Thank you so much, Shewa, for joining us to discuss this. You'll still be with us to give us forecast, but we'll go on a short break now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, away from the old controversy about Nigeria's oil theft saga, let's move straight to the forecast segment. And then we see that there are demonstrations that have continued in Ethiopia's Amhara region against the federal government's plans to integrate local defense forces into the police and the national army. Now, the Amhara has been agitated by days of protest against the government's plans, which the protesters say they would leave Amhara vulnerable to attack from other regions. Now, away from that, let's move straight to the next story that we'll be tracking for you. Now, the major opposition coalition in Kenya, that's led by Raila Odinga, has made plans to engage the public directly as it prepares to deliberate on electoral changes with the government. And now, the former president said that he would have its first town hall meeting on Thursday, followed by a public protest on Sunday in Nairobi, the country's capital, to explain to the people where the party stands and the next course of action. Now, moving away from Kenya, we go straight to the IMF saying that it has approved a $261.7 million loan for Burundi in an effort to support economic recovery and reforms. And this is its first in 8 years. Now, however, both the European Union and the United States restored aid supplies last year, despite reservations about Burundi's human rights record. And that's all we have for you on the forecast segment. We hope that you stay tuned as we track the stories for you on News Central TV. It's back to you, Nii, and blessings.
All right, thank you so much, Adeshara, for that forecast. And like you said, we'll see how it unfolds so we can give the updates to our viewers.
Definitely.
It's been a beautiful episode of Report Desk Africa,
beautiful one,
don't you
an
think?
exciting one at that. And we hope that IMF money in Burundi, it won't be swallowed as well. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. We hope to have you once again next week, same time, same day. And of course, we promise to bring you more exciting episode. I am Nii Oni.
I'm Blessings Musugu, and
I'm Deshawa Odushaga. See you next week.